Hey everyone, and welcome back to the AnzenGuard podcast. I'm Michael Reynolds, and I'm really excited for today's deep dive. I think it's going to be a good one.
And I'm Laura Wilson, ready to jump in.
Yeah. So today we're talking about something that I think affects pretty much everyone listening to this, and that's phishing attacks.
Absolutely.
You know those online scams where someone's trying to trick you into giving up your information or clicking a dangerous link?
Yeah, they're unfortunately everywhere.
They are. And you know what's crazy? It's not just like a few emails here and there. We're talking billions of phishing links that are being sent out every year.
It's mind-boggling. And they're getting more and more sophisticated all the time.
So we should probably start off by explaining exactly how these phishing attacks actually work. Like, what are the steps involved from the scammer's point of view?
Okay, so usually it starts with picking a target.
Right, like who are they going after?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's very specific, like they're looking for someone in a particular role at a company or someone with access to certain types of information. And sometimes it's more like casting a wide net and seeing who they can catch.
Okay. So it could be anyone, really.
Pretty much. And once they have a target in mind, then they choose their weapon, so to speak.
Oh, I like that. What do you mean by weapon?
Well, the communication method. How are they going to reach their victim? Is it going to be through email, text message, a social media post, maybe even a phone call?
Oh, wow. So it's not just those dodgy emails we used to get all the time.
Not anymore. They're using all sorts of ways to reach people these days.
And then comes the bait, right? Like they have to offer something tempting to get people to engage.
Absolutely. This is where they really tap into human psychology. You know, they might offer something that sounds too good to be true, like a free cruise or a huge discount.
Oh, yeah. Those you've won the lottery emails.
Exactly. Or they might play on people's fears, you know, like
Ugh.
warning about a problem with your bank account or saying that your account's been compromised.
Oh, man. That would get my attention for sure.
Right. And that's exactly what they're hoping for. They want you to react without thinking too much.
So they can spring the trap.
Exactly. So you might click a link that takes you to a fake website that looks just like the real thing, but it's actually designed to steal your login credentials. Or you might download an attachment that infects your computer with malware.
And that's how they get access to your information.
Exactly. And once they have that information, they can use it for all sorts of bad things.
Yeah. That's pretty scary. It's like giving them the keys to your digital life.
Right. And that's why it's so important to be aware of the different types of phishing attacks out there and how to spot them.
Okay. Well, let's dive into that then. What are some of the common types of phishing attacks we should be on the lookout for?
Okay, so let's start with the most common one, email phishing.
Ah, the classic. I think everyone's probably seen one of these at some point.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if you haven't. These are those mass emails that are sent out to huge lists of people. They try to look like they're coming from a legitimate organization like your bank or a social media company.
Right, like trying to blend in with all the other emails we get every day.
Exactly. They might use the company's logo, official-sounding language. Even fake email addresses that look very similar to the real thing.
So how can you tell if an email address is fake?
Well, you have to look very closely. Sometimes it's just a slight misspelling or a substituted character. You know, like a 0 instead of an O.
Oh, wow. That's sneaky.
It is. So always scrutinize the sender's address before you click anything.
And what if the email looks like it's from someone you know, like a friend or a family member?
Well, that brings us to another type of phishing attack called spear phishing.
Spear phishing. Okay. What's that all about?
So spear phishing is much more targeted. Unlike those mass email blasts, spear phishing attacks focus on specific individuals or organizations.
So it's like a sniper rifle versus a shotgun?
Exactly. They're doing their research. They might be looking at your social media profiles, your company website, even public records to gather information about you.
So they might know your name, your job title, even some of your interests.
Absolutely. And then they use that information to craft personalized messages that seem like they're coming from someone you know and trust.
Oh, wow. That's a lot harder to spot.
It is, because they're preying on our natural tendency to trust people we know.
So what about those emails that look exactly like ones you've received before, from a sender you trust?
Ah, you're talking about clone phishing?
Clone phishing, is that what it's called?
Yeah, so with clone phishing, they actually take a legitimate email that you've received before, and they make a copy of it. But they change the links or the attachments to malicious ones.
So they're exploiting your existing trust?
Precisely. They know that you've already seen a similar email before, so you're less likely to be suspicious.
That's really clever, but also really scary.
It is, and it shows how sophisticated these scammers are getting.
So we've got email phishing, spear phishing,
Yeah.
clone phishing. What else is there?
Let's talk about whaling. Have you ever heard of that one?
Whaling, like hunting whales?
Well, sort of. In this
Uh-huh.
case, the whales are high-ranking executives, CEOs, CFOs, people like that. Ah, okay. So they're going after the big fish.
Exactly. These attacks are usually very carefully planned. They might spend weeks or even months gathering information about their target.
So they really know who they're going after.
They do. And then they use that information to craft incredibly convincing messages. They might impersonate a colleague, a client, even a trusted vendor.
So it seems like it's coming from someone they know and trust.
Exactly. And that's what makes whaling so dangerous. It can lead to massive data breaches, financial losses, even reputational damage for an organization.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. It seems like scammers are using every trick in the book to try to fool us.
They are. And it's not just limited to email anymore.
Right. What else is there?
They're using text messages, phone calls, even social media to launch their attacks.
Okay. So we need to be vigilant on all fronts, not just our inboxes.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been really eye-opening. So far, we've talked about how phishing attacks work and some of the different types of attacks out there. But what can we actually do to protect ourselves? Like, what are some of the red flags we should be looking for? That's a great question. And it's important to remember that vigilance is our best defense. The more we know about the techniques scammers use, the better equipped we are to spot them and avoid falling victim.
Okay, so what are some of the things we should be watching out for?
Well, one of the biggest ones is suspicious email addresses. Always scrutinize the sender's address before clicking anything. Look for misspellings, strange characters, or domain names that don't match the organization the email claims to be from.
So if I get an email that looks like it's from my bank, but the sender's address is something like bankofamerica.scam.com, that's a major red flag.
Absolutely. Legitimate organizations will always use their official domain names for email communications. And don't be fooled by subtle variations or misspellings. Scammers often use these tactics to try to trick you at a glance.
Okay, so suspicious email addresses are a big warning sign. What else should we be watching out for?
Another common tactic is using urgent or threatening language. Phishing messages often try to create a sense of panic or pressure to act quickly.
Like those emails that say, your account has been compromised. Click this link immediately to reset your password.
Exactly. Legitimate organizations rarely use this type of language in their communications. If you receive an email or message that demands immediate action or threatens negative consequences if you don't comply, take a step back and think critically.
So don't let those scare tactics get to you. It's always better to err on the side of caution. What other red flags should we be aware of?
Well, be wary of unsolicited attachments or links. If you receive an email from someone you don't know, or even from someone you do know, but the content seems out of character, be very cautious about opening any attachments or clicking any links.
So even if the email looks like it's from a friend, it's best to double check before downloading anything.
Absolutely. It's always better to be safe than sorry. You can always reach out to the sender separately through a known and trusted communication channel to verify whether they actually sent the email and whether the attachments are safe.
That's a great tip. I think a lot of people might assume that if an email comes from someone they know, it must be legitimate.
That's a common misconception. Unfortunately, scammers can easily spoof email addresses or even hack into people's accounts to send malicious messages from their contacts.
So we can't just rely on the sender's name to determine whether an email is safe. We need to look at the content, the links, and the attachments carefully.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
always trust your instincts. If something seems off about an email or message, don't hesitate to delete it or report it as spam. It's better to be overly cautious than to risk falling victim to a phishing attack.
Yeah, it really does feel like you have to be a detective sometimes just to check your email.
It's true. And it's not just email. We were talking about all the different communication methods they use.
Right, text messages.
Yeah, have you ever heard of smishing?
Smishing.
It's basically phishing, but through SMS text messages.
Oh, okay, so like those texts that say you have a package delivery, but you didn't order anything.
Yeah. Or they might say there's a problem with your bank account and you need to click a link to fix it.
Oh, man. This is so annoying. They always seem to come at the worst possible times.
Yeah.
I know, right? When you're busy or distracted.
Exactly. When you're less likely to think critically about it.
Right. And that's exactly what they're counting on.
So we have to be just as careful with text messages as we are with emails.
Absolutely. Don't click any links or give out any personal information unless you're absolutely sure the message is legitimate.
Okay, good to know. And what about phone calls? I've heard those can be used for phishing, too.
Yeah, that's called vishing voice phishing.
Vishing. Okay, so someone calls you pretending to be from your bank or the IRS or something.
Exactly. And they might try to scare you into giving them your information, like saying you owe taxes or that your account has been frozen.
Ugh, I hate those calls. They always sound so official.
They do. They often use very convincing language and even fake caller ID to make it seem like they're really calling from a legitimate organization.
So how can you tell if a phone call is a scam?
Well, if you're not expecting a call from a particular organization, it's always best to err on the side of caution. You can always hang up and call the organization back directly using a verified phone number. Okay, so don't just take their word for it.
Right, and never give out any personal information over the phone unless you initiated the call and you're sure you're talking to a legitimate representative.
Got it. So email, text messages,
Yeah.
phone calls. It seems like these scammers are everywhere.
They are, and we can't forget about social media either.
Oh, right. Social media. That's another whole world of potential scams.
It is. Scammers can create fake profiles, impersonate real people, even set up entire fake pages that look like they belong to legitimate businesses.
Wow. So how do they use social media for phishing?
Well, one way is through direct messages. They might send you a message that looks like it's from a friend or a company you follow, and they might include a link that takes you to a phishing website. Or they might ask you for personal information directly.
So you really have to be careful who you're talking to on social media.
Absolutely. And don't just click on any link you see. Even if it comes from someone you know, it's always best to double check before clicking anything.
And what about those fake customer support accounts I've seen on Twitter and Facebook?
Yeah. Those are another common tactic. Scammers will set up a fake account that uses a company's logo and name.
So it looks official.
Exactly. And then they'll wait for people to publicly complain about a problem they're having with that company.
So they're monitoring social media for people who are already frustrated and looking for help.
Exactly. And then they swoop in pretending to be helpful customer service reps.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's so sneaky.
It is. But remember, legitimate companies will rarely ask for your personal information over social media. If you're ever unsure about an account, you can always contact the company directly through their official website or phone number.
Okay. So we really have to be careful on social media, too. It's like a minefield out there.
It can feel that way, but don't let it scare you off. Just be aware of the risks and take precautions to protect yourself.
Okay, so we've talked about email, text messages, phone calls, social media. It seems like every way we communicate online is vulnerable to these attacks.
It's true. But the good news is that there are things we can do to protect ourselves.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. What are some practical tips to avoid falling victim to these scams?
Well, we've already talked about some of the red flags to look for.
Right, like suspicious email addresses, urgent language, unsolicited attachments, things like that.
Exactly. But let's dive a little deeper into some of those red flags and talk about some other things you can do to stay safe online. Okay? So let's say, despite our best efforts, we do end up clicking on a phishing link or downloading a malicious attachment. What should we do?
Yeah, that's my worst nightmare. I always think, what if I accidentally click on something and my computer gets infected or my identity gets stolen?
It's a scary thought, but it's important to remember that even the most security-conscious people can make mistakes.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
The key is to act quickly and decisively to minimize any potential damage. So first things first, stop all interaction immediately.
Like close the window, stop the download, unplug the computer.
Well, unplugging the computer might not always be necessary. But yes, basically you want to cut off the connection between your device and the phishing attempt.
Got it. So it just hit the eject button.
Exactly.
Wait.
And then once you've done that, it's time to start thinking about damage control.
Okay. What does that involve?
Well, one of the most important things you can do is change your passwords.
For any accounts I think might have been compromised.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially if you entered any passwords on a fake website. But it's also a good idea to change passwords for any other accounts that use a similar password.
Just to be safe.
Right? You don't want the scammers to be able to access any of your other accounts.
And while we're talking about passwords, we should probably mention two-factor authentication.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Two-factor authentication is one of the best ways to protect your accounts. It adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to enter a code from your phone or email in addition to your password.
So even if the scammers do get their hands on your password, they still can't access your account.
Exactly. It's a huge deterrent.
Okay, so change passwords. Enable two-factor authentication. What else?
If you shared any financial information, like credit card details, contact your credit card provider immediately.
Oh yeah, that's important.
They can monitor your account for suspicious activity and even issue you a new card if necessary.
And what about the credit bureaus? Should I contact them too?
Yes, definitely. Consider placing a freeze on your credit. This will prevent anyone from opening new accounts in your name without your permission.
That's a good idea. I've heard about credit freezes, but I never really understood how they worked.
It's basically like putting a lock on your credit report, so no one can access it without your authorization.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've changed our passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, contacted our credit card provider, and frozen our credit. Anything else?
Yes. One last but very important step. Run a full scan with a reputable antivirus program.
Oh, right. We need to make sure our device isn't infected with malware.
Exactly. If you clicked on a phishing link or downloaded an attachment, there's a chance that some malicious software might have snuck onto your computer.
And that could be really bad.
It could. So it's important to run a scan to check for and remove any malware that might be lurking on your system.
Okay, so we've cleaned up our device, secured our accounts, and taken steps to protect our credit. Is there anything else we can do?
Yes. Actually, there's one more thing, and it's something that a lot of people forget to do.
What's that?
Report the phishing attack.
Oh, right. You mentioned that earlier. But why is it so important? I mean, if I've already taken steps to protect myself, why bother reporting it?
Well, for one thing, it helps authorities track these threats and identify the scammers behind them.
So they can try to stop them.
Exactly. And it also helps to prevent other people from falling victim to the same scam.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about protecting myself. It's about helping to protect others, too.
Exactly. It's about contributing to a safer online environment for everyone.
That makes sense. So where can I report a phishing attack?
You can report it to your email provider, the Anti-Phishing Working Group, or even the Federal Trade Commission.
Yeah.
Most organizations have easy-to-use online forms for reporting these incidents.
Great. I'll definitely do that. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been really informative and hopefully a little bit empowering.
I agree. I think it's important for people to understand the risks of phishing attacks, but also to know that there are things they can do to protect themselves.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. And by being aware of these threats and taking precautions, we can all stay safer online.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of phishing attacks. I'm Michael Reynolds.
And I'm Laura Wilson.
Don't forget to subscribe to the AnzenGuard podcast for more insightful discussions on all things cybersecurity. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review. It really helps others find the show. Thanks for listening, and stay safe online.